بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So quickly, just to revise everything, obviously we can't go into detail, especially with the time of Maghrib being so early at the moment. And bi'idhnillah, in a couple of weeks we'll change the timing so that class is after Maghrib. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And even today's lesson, depending on how much we take, we might continue after Maghrib for maybe about 20 minutes. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala, because there's a certain amount that I want to do today. I want to finish, I'm trying to finish off the history today, inshallah. That's the idea, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. I'll plug this in. So quickly, Naeem, define hadith linguistically. Faisal. Firstly, answering a completely different question. Linguistically, the word hadith means something new. And as for the technical meaning, then you're close. Anything which is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ from his statements, actions, tacit approvals, physical characteristics, and mannerisms. And what's the definition of hadith or sunnah according to the usuliyun, scholars of usul al-fiqh? Don't know. Taking out characteristics and mannerisms. So same definition of hadith, but taking that out. According to the scholars of aqidah.
Opposite to bid'ah.
Opposite to bid'ah. It refers to aqidah. First to your beliefs, and more specifically opposite to bid'ah. Okay. What's sanad and matan? Name. Chain of narration and matan. The text. Now what's said there? The Prophet said, "Innamal a'malu binniyat." Innamal a'malu binniyat is the matan. What's the difference? I should leave that question, right? What's the relationship between the Quran and Sunnah? Yusuf. The Sunnah does three things. What does it do? In connection to the Quran. Or in other words, what's the point of the Sunnah if you already have the Quran? Haider. That's the main answer. That explains what's in the Quran. The other two is that it corresponds and agrees with that which is already in the Quran. And the third answer is it adds a few small secondary rulings, or a few rulings which are not mentioned within the Quran. What's the meaning? How do we love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Give me some signs, Faisal. Loving what he loved and hating what he hated, okay? That's the things that you love. The action, the person, the place, and the time. Anything else? The main one is by following the Prophet ﷺ. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ. Say that if you love Allah, then follow me. And follow Sunnah Muslim ﷺ. And then the others, loving what he loves and hating what he hates, sending salah upon him, learning about him. All of these things are also from the signs of loving the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. How many types of hadith are there in total? From the angle of its authenticity, in detail. Uncle.
Sahih, Hasan, and Da'if.
That's general. Bit more detail.
There is five.
Five, good.
Yeah.
So Sahih is two types. Sahih, Sahih لذاته, Sahih by itself, and Sahih لغيره, by others. The Hasan لذاته and Hasan لغيره, and then ضعيف. Okay. Sami, what are the conditions of authentic hadith? How many are there? 5. Give me one. So there's 3, remember we said 3 that have to be there and 2 things that can't be there.
The narrator has to be sound of memory.
He has to be?
Sound of memory.
Sound of memory.
Recollecting his
Right? So, okay, one is complete chain of narration. Okay, Faisal, another. Yes, no, so authentic by itself has 5 conditions to make something authentic by itself. The first condition is that the chain has to be complete. Muru'ah is a subcategory of something else. What's that subcategory of? Of adala, being trustworthy. The narrator has to be trustworthy. How do we know if a narrator is trustworthy? We said taqwa and muru'ah. Taqwa meaning he doesn't do major sins, nor is he persistent upon minor sins. And muru'ah is that he doesn't do anything which is looked down upon in society. So we've got 2 so far. We've got a connected chain of narration, and we've got that the narrator has to be trustworthy. And then the third thing that has to be there, what's your name? Yusuf. Perfect memory. How do you know if somebody's got perfect memory? How many mistakes? No set amount. So how do you work it out? You look at how many narrations he's got, and you look at the percent of how many mistakes he's made, and then the muhaddith will decide. Every muhaddith will be slightly different. Exactly how many mistakes is considered too many. Yusuf, what if a person, his memory is bad, but he's narrating from a book? Is that okay? Yeah. So if he narrates by memory, he makes a lot of mistakes. But so what he does instead is that he reads from the book all the time and he doesn't make a mistake. Is that person sahih? Huh? Stick to your original answer. Yeah. Good. Right. The 2 things that can't be there. Illa, hidden defects, and shudhuz, which is contradictions, where a trustworthy narrator cannot go against the narrator who is more trustworthy than him. Right, that's sahih by itself. What's hasan by itself? The exact same apart from? Good memory instead of perfect memory. And sahih by others, Sami? Hadith which is? Naim? Who's supporting who? Any hadith that supports another hadith is sahih by others. Yes, it's a hadith which is hasan لغيره, hasan لذاته, and due to supporting narrations, it becomes sahih لغيره. And the same goes for hasan لغيره. It's a hadith which is da'if, but light amount of weakness, and then due to the supporting narrations, it strengthens it and it becomes hasan لغيره. Okay, what are there's a lot of other issues, but the questions I'm asking you now, like, firstly, it's not everything because we don't have time, but secondly, these are the main things that you have to know, right? Bilal, what are different types of hadith in terms of who the hadith is attributed to? So I'll give you one. You got hadith Qudsi, which is attributed to Allah. Amash? Marfu' to Prophet ﷺ. Then? Mawquf to a Sahabi? Not munqati', very close to that though. Maqtu'. Maqtu'. Good. Maqtu' is to a tabi'i. What's the difference between maqtu' and munqati'?
Munqati is the chain of relation, but maqtu' is the
Yeah, so maqtu' is who said it, a tabi'i said it. Munqati' means that somebody is missing in the chain of narration. A lot of students get mixed up because they sound very similar. So if somebody is missing in the chain of narration, let's say there's 5 people, the third person is missing, the hadith is known as munqati'. So the scholars of hadith, they look at the chain of narration. If it's connected, then it's muttasil, fully connected, right? But if somebody's missing from the chain of narration, depending on who's missing, on where they're missing, or how many people are missing, they give it different names. If somebody's missing in the middle of the chain, or anywhere in the middle of the chain, then it's known as munqati'. If the sahabi is missing, or the person between a tabi'i and the Prophet ﷺ, then that's known as mursal. If the teacher, the sheikh of the one whose book it's in, if he's missing and anybody above him, it's known as mu'allaq. If there's 2 people missing together, it's called mu'adal. Right? So each type is given a name. And there's a reason for that because each one has a different ruling. So for example, one person missing in a chain of narration is not as bad as two people missing together. If one person is missing in a chain of narration, you can work out who the missing person is by looking at other chains of narration, looking at who that narrator's teachers are, looking at the other narrator, who his students are, who's the connecting person. You can try to work it out. But if there's two people missing together, then it's a lot more harder to work it out. And it's a lot more weaker. Right? So, so inshallah we'll study all of that in Mustalah al-Hadith. Right, different types of hadith in terms of the number of narrations. There are two main types of mutawatir and ahad. What are the conditions of mutawatir? Musa. Shanawaz. What are the conditions of mutawatir hadith? Yeah, that's what it means, but what's the condition? Very large number of narrators. That's number one. Number two, in each level. Number three. The four conditions you mentioned. Something tangible, I heard or I saw. Can't be I think. There's one more. It's impossible for them to gather together upon ally. Okay. And ahad is split into how many types? Faisal? Not two? So we got this in mutawatir and ahad. Okay? Ahad is anything which doesn't reach the level of mutawatir or fulfills the conditions of mutawatir. But ahad itself is number of types. Three types. Good. Give me one. One type of ahad. So three or more, what's that called? Mashhur. Sami, give me another type. Okay, Naim. Gharib, what's a gharib? Gharib is not, lowest number is one. Awab, what's the one missing? Aziz, the lowest number is two. Come, you guys need to revise. Right. Haidar, how do we combine between the two ahadith? Those ahadith that when the Prophet prohibited writing of hadith and other ahadith where he allowed it. So give me the strongest opinion. It was prohibited for a certain period of time and then it was allowed later on, which is known as abrogation, nasakh. Okay, and then the second opinion is that they try to combine, and they say things like, oh, it's only allowed, it was prohibited if you write hadith and Quran on the same page, or it was only allowed for those who didn't have good memory, and the ulama give different answers. And the third is that the prohibition is actually a statement of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri and not the Prophet ﷺ, and that's the weakest opinion. Right. How do we answer the doubt that Abu Hurairah, how could he have narrated the most hadith if he was only with the Prophet ﷺ for 4 years? Shazad? I wouldn't word it like that he spent the most time more than anyone else, but he spent a lot of time, more than others, because of the fact that he didn't have any obligations. Or else? Nuh. Yeah, if you work out the amount that he's narrated, if you just count the days he with the Prophet ﷺ, it's about 4 hadith a day. That's if you don't count all the years he lived after the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Only with the Prophet ﷺ, that means 4 hadith a day. Huh? Dua al Prophet ﷺ. Yeah. When he was by himself, he would just be revising hadith. No, he lived for a century. He passed to 57 Hijrah. He lived for about half a century. Okay, just under 50 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, other Sahaba passed away before him. Your uncle mentioned that. Other companions have more responsibilities. Abu Bakr was a Khalifa, Umar was a Khalifa, and so on. Right, okay, that's okay. Right. How do we answer the doubt that some scholars have said that Imam al-Zuhri was the first one to write hadith? Haider. So a non-Muslim might say, well, your own scholars have said that the first one to write hadith was Imam al-Zuhri, who came at the end of the 1st century. Therefore, between the Prophet ﷺ and writing down hadith, there's 100 years, so how can you trust it? First, you have scrolls of Sahaba. The Sahaba wrote down hadith. So what do scholars mean when it was Imam Zuhri was the first one to do it? First official compilation. The first official compilation. What else could we say? Even if it wasn't written down, the asal in hadith is that it's orally transmitted. It's orally transmitted. So even if it wasn't written down, and it was, but even if it wasn't, it's not an issue. Right, give me the name of the 4 books you took last lesson. Faisal. You missed that lesson. Bilal? You missed that lesson. Amish? Don't know. Awab? The 2 Musannafat, what else? The Muwatta Imam Malik, and the 4th one? The Musnad of Imam Ahmad. What is a Musnad? You don't know. See that? That's Muwatta. What's a Musnad?
The offsaying of the Sahaba, right?
That's Musannaf. The hadith are ordered upon the names of the companions. A Musnad book is a book where the hadith are ordered upon the names of the companions. The Musannaf is the one where it has statements of the Prophet ﷺ, but it focuses more on the statements of Sahaba and Tabi'een. Focuses more on mawqufat and maqtu'at. And then the Muwatta is something which has been made, the meaning is that it's been made easy for the people, because Imam Malik, he made it so that it's a book that the people can go back to find hadith. And it also means that the agreement, i.e. the scholars agreed to this book. When he wrote this book, he showed it to the scholars and they agreed and liked what was in that book. But the definition given to Muwatta, that's like 2 reasons it was called Muwatta. But the definition of Muwatta is a hadith, is a book ordered upon the chapters of fiqh, which has marfu'at, mawqufat and maqtu'at as well. And also, especially Imam Malik, it has balaghat as well. Right, you guys need to revise. So I didn't want to ask difficult questions. Alright, I'll just ask you the simple questions. But right now, I didn't even have anything in front of me. I just had the context page in front of me to see the topics. Right? That is whatever I ask you right now is like the minimum you should know from memory. Okay, the details, how many number of hadith in each book, how many books, how many chapters, that stuff you forget. Even I forget that stuff sometimes. Right? But what's a Musnad? A book ordered upon the chapters of the names of Sahaba. What's a Musannaf? What's a Muwatta? What is scrolls of the Sahaba, scrolls of the Tabi'een, the meaning of Hadith, Sunnah, the function of the Sunnah with the Quran, Hujjiyat Sunnah. I didn't ask that question, but some adillah for Hujjiyat Sunnah. These are things that you should all know. And one way to check how much you remember or not, just open up the worksheet, just have the contents page in front of you so you remember the topics. And at each title, look at it and see how much you can explain from memory. Imagine yourself, you're sat there, imagine you're the teacher. You see the titles. Right now I can see, it says first introduction, hadith, types of hadith, is books, it's history and books. So the first thing is definitions. And it says hadith, right? See from memory, can you try to explain what the meaning of hadith is linguistically and technically? Then it says sunnah, right? What's the meaning of the word sunnah? Try to explain it. Sit by yourself and see how much you can explain. Is there a difference between hadith, sunnah and seerah? See if you can answer that. The sanad and matan. See if you can explain sanad and matan. Authority of the sunnah from Quran, from sunnah, ijma'. See if you can give adillah from each. Loving the Prophet ﷺ. So just go through the chapter headings. That's the minimum you should know. And then obviously the more you keep going over it, inshallah you can learn the details as well. Today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will try to complete the rest of the books. So we are now on in the worksheet page 67, where it says Sahih Al-Bukhari. It says Sahih Al-Bukhari. So, firstly, what is a Sahih book? The plural of Sahih, they call it Sihah. Sihah, Sadha, Alif, Ha. And Sahih is a very simple definition. It's a book which comprises of authentic narrations from the Prophet ﷺ. It's a hadith book which comprises of authentic narrations upon the Prophet ﷺ. And the most famous Sahihs are, we have Sahih Al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. They're the most famous. But then we have others as well. And there's three more. There's one called Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. We have another called Sahih Ibn Hibban. Sahih Ibn Hibban. Then the third one is called Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain. Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain by Imam al-Hakim. Inshallah, we can try to get to that book today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So we're going to go through these books, right? So first one is Sahih Al-Bukhari. The first one is Sahih Al-Bukhari. Now, most of what I'm going to mention is already written in the worksheets. So there's not much writing that you have to do. Now, Sahih Al-Bukhari is not actually the name of Sahih Al-Bukhari. It's just a nickname. Because his book is Sahih and it's written by Imam Al-Bukhari. So it's called Sahih Al-Bukhari, i.e. the book Sahih by Imam Al-Bukhari. That's the meaning of Sahih Al-Bukhari. But what's the actual name? The actual name, as I've written here and it's in bold, is called Al-Jami' Al-Musnad Al-Sahih Al-Mukhtasar Min Umuri Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamihi. Al-Jami' Al-Musnad Al-Sahih Al-Mukhtasar Min Umuri Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamihi. So what's the meaning of this name? First, it's called Al-Jami'. Now, Al-Jami', it would translate to the comprehensive. Okay? But in Hadith, if a book is known as Al-Jami', what that basically means is that it's not restricted to one topic, but that book consists of 8 main topics. It consists of 8 main topics. So from that, we can learn, and I'll mention the topics in a second, they're written anyway, but we can learn that some books, they have certain topics. We're going to get to the Sunan, like Sunan Abu Dawood and so on. Those ahadith pertaining to fiqh only. But if something's called a jami', it's not just got ahadith pertaining to fiqh. It's got aqidah, it's got tafsir, it's got seerah and all of that. So I've written down the 8 topics here. It says number 1, aqidah. Number 2, ahkam, which are fiqh rulings. Number 3, al-raqa'iq was zuhd, heart softeners and asceticism. Number 4 is al-adab, etiquettes. Number 5 is tafsir. So whenever the Prophet said the meaning of this word is this word and so on. We have Tarikh wal-Maghazi, history and battles. Yani seerah basically. We have Al-Fitan wa Ashrat al-Sa'ah. Trials and tribulations and signs of the day of judgment. The signs of the hour. And Al-Manaqib wal-Fada'il, virtues of prophets, virtues of Sahaba and so on. So as you can see, there are many different topics. So Sahih Bukhari, a question may come, what is the topic of Sahih Bukhari? Which ahadith does it have? Is it specific to rulings? The answer is no. It's got rulings, but it's also got aqidah, it's got tafsir, it's got seerah, it's got adab, it's got signs of the day of judgment, it's got virtues and so on. That's the meaning of the word al-jami'. Al-musnad, now al-musnad has 2 meanings, right? We've taken one, which is that if al-musnad is referring to a book, then it is a book which has been authored upon the names of the Sahaba. We've taken that. But if a hadith is called musnad, that is hadith is hadithun musnad, what it means is that it has a whole chain, it has a complete chain of narration going back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It has a complete chain of narration going back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And by the way, this full name, make sure you guys memorize it, especially for Bukhari and Muslim. In the exam, inshallah, it'll come up. Yeah, there's an exam. As soon as we finish the intro, before we start the hadith, there'll be an exam just on the intro. How many lessons? I think 2 more. 2 more, we should finish the intro. Maybe one more. It all depends on how much we can do today and how much we do next lesson. Okay? Right. So al-musnad means It has a complete chain of narration going back to the Prophet ﷺ. So Imam Bukhari is saying that this book has all of these topics and all the chains are complete. Al-Mukhtasar means summarized. And that's because all of these books, the 6 books of Hadith, even the Musnad of Ahmad, even though the Musnad of Ahmad is more in depth, it has a lot more Hadith, but especially the 6 books of Hadith, it doesn't have every single Hadith in there. It has the most important Hadith in there. So it's a summary. So Imam Bukhari, they say he memorized 600,000 Hadith. And if you want a rough idea, a rough number, we're going to mention the number inshallah, but if you want a rough number of each of the Kutub al-Sittah, 6 books of Hadith, how many Hadith they have, 5,000 is a decent number. Alright, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood. We'll mention the exact number, but that's like a rough average number I can give you. So you can imagine if somebody's memorized 600,000 Hadith and he's only putting 5,000 in, or even Imam Ahmad memorized 1,000,000 Hadith and he's only putting in, from that 1,000,000, 27,000. Right? So it's mukhtasar, so it's summarized. Min umuri Rasulillah, from the affairs of the Messenger of Allah. From the affairs of the Messenger of Allah. Wa sunanihi, and from his sunnah. Or sunan is a plural of the sunnah, so sunnahs in English. Wa ayyamihi, and his days. And what he would do during his day and so on. The things that he did. Right? So in other words, Imam Bukhari is saying that this is a summarized book of Hadith, comprising of all of these different chapters, with complete change of narration regarding the life of the Prophet ﷺ and what he used to do. That's the title of Sahih Al-Bukhari. Okay? And that's something which is done, a lot, even now with contemporary books. They shorten the name. If a certain sheikh has for example, Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, he has an explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed, which is known, he titled it Al-Qawl al-Mufid, the beneficial speech in the explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed. Al-Qawl al-Mufid fi sharh or bi sharhi Kitab al-Tawheed. Right? But a lot of people just refer to it as Sharh Ibn Uthaymin, the explanation of Ibn Uthaymin. It's just easier, especially if you forget the name. Same with Bukhari. This is a long name. Right? People forget this name. And Imam Muslim has a similar name as well. So it's confusing. So it's easier just to call it Sahih Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. But as a student of knowledge, you need to know this. Especially, a lot of the ulama in the past, they would refer to Sahih Al-Bukhari as Al-Jami' Al-Musnad or Al-Jami' Al-Sahih. They wouldn't say Sahih Al-Bukhari. So if you're reading that speech, for you to understand that speech, you need to know the name of Sahih Al-Bukhari. Now, why did Imam Al-Bukhari author this book? What made him author this book? There are 3 main reasons. The first reason is a general reason, which you can apply this to other scholars as well, where he saw the weak hadith being spread. All of this is written, by the way. All of this is written in the worksheets. Due to the widespread of weak hadith or books of hadith that were not entirely sahih. Number 2, and the second and third reason is more specific to Imam al-Bukhari. The second reason is when Imam al-Bukhari was sat with his teacher, Ishaq ibn Rahuya. And his teacher said to Imam Bukhari, why don't you gather his summarized book, gathering the sunan of the Prophet ﷺ? His teacher said this to him, because Imam Bukhari had the status, even though he was a student. The teacher acknowledged the status of Imam Bukhari, so he said to him, why don't you gather a book that has the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ in there? And Imam Bukhari said, that hit me in my heart, then I started to gather this book. And that had an effect on me, that request, that my teacher wants me to do this. And this request, this is a lesson for us, that sometimes just saying one good word, one piece of advice, can have so much good behind it. And all of this good work that Imam al-Bukhari did, the reward is going back to his teacher, Ishaq ibn Rahuya. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-dalu ala khair kafa'ilih," that the one who directs somebody towards good, he will have the reward like the one who is doing the good. And in other narrations, without his reward being decreased at all. So he'll get the person doing the reward, let's say he gets doing the action gets 100 rewards. He'll get 100 rewards, you will also get 100 rewards as well. And we've not taken the life of Imam Nawawi yet, but a similar story happened with Imam Nawawi. When he was young, other kids were playing, and he was sat by himself, studying, reading the Quran and so on. An old man who was walking past saw this, and saw the potential in Imam Nawawi. So he went to his father, and obviously at this time he wasn't Imam Nawawi. He was just Yahya bin Sharaf Nawawi. He saw the potential in this kid Yahya. He went to his father, and his father wanted him to work and make money for the family. but he advised his father to send him to seek knowledge, and eventually the father agreed, and Imam An-Nawawi became Imam An-Nawawi, and we're studying his book. So it doesn't necessarily have to be from the teacher, it can be contemporaries, it can be any random person, it can be from students as well. We're going to learn that one of the reasons Imam Muslim wrote his book is because one of the students requested him to write the book. And even some of the smaller books that I've written, Hujjiyat al-Sunnah and so on. Like the Hujjiyat al-Sunnah, that book, a small book, but point being is that I did a dawrah in Masjid Imam An-Nawawi. And actually taught this intro that we're doing here, I taught it there about half a year ago. Or maybe more, whenever it was. And when I talked about Hujjiyat al-Sunnah, one of the brothers, they came up to me and they said, oh look, we were discussing that Ustadh, would be amazing if whatever you taught, you actually write it down in depth and actually put in, because obviously I summarized it. He said, it'd be amazing if you could do all of that. And then he was on my case as well. I said, please be on my case, I'm going to forget. Right? So when I got back to here, he kept messaging me, Ustadh, what's any updates, this, that. And that brother's a designer as well. So he said, look, I'll make the front cover for you. So Allah barik, that brother who made the front cover, it's a nice front cover, yeah? He made that as well. So he pushed me through it, and now alhamdulillah it's a published book, and you can read it and you can benefit from it. So you can see the benefit that comes out from just one piece of advice, one request, or one good statement. Number 3 is due to seeing a dream. Imam Bukhari, he said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ and it was as though I was fighting off flies. And he saw the Prophet ﷺ and it was as though he was squatting flies, so they don't go towards the Prophet ﷺ. So he had this dream. So he went to those people who interpret dreams and he informed them of what he saw, and they said to him, you are the one who is defending the Prophet ﷺ from lies against him. So basically those flies that you are squatting and defending the Prophet ﷺ from, that's like you defending him from lies and from weak ahadith. Because narrating weak ahadith is a form of lying from the Prophet ﷺ. So Imam Bukhari, he said, that made me author Al-Jami'. Al-Jami' is what? Sahih Al-Bukhari. See, if you didn't know the name and you just read that, you'd think it's a different book. But he's referring to Sahih Al-Bukhari. Another issue is the chapter headings of Imam Bukhari. So Imam Bukhari has written this book. It took him about 16 years to write this book. And one of the things that Imam Bukhari is very good at is, or is very precise in, is, and it's known as Fiqh al-Bukhari fi tarajumihi. The fiqh of Imam Bukhari in his chapter headings. The fiqh of Imam al-Bukhari in his chapter headings. This is because Imam Bukhari, if you want to know what his fiqh opinion was regarding a certain topic, you would look at the chapter heading. So he would say, I'll make up an example. He would say, what has come in regarding the permissibility of X, Y, and Z. And then he mentioned a number of hadith. From there you learn that Imam al-Bukhari, his opinion is that that action is permissible and it's not impermissible. So like that, Imam al-Bukhari would do it now. Other scholars do that as well, but Imam al-Bukhari was very, very precise. And sometimes it's easy to work out what he means, and other times it is very difficult. And that's why there are actually, from the works that have been done upon Bukhari, so many works have been done on Sahih Bukhari. It's been summarized, it's been explained, certain topics have been talked about. One of the things which have been talked about regarding Sahih Bukhari is separate books. I think Shaykh Abdul Wakil al-Hashimi from Makkah, he wrote a book just explaining the chapter headings of Bukhari. That's it. Not explaining the hadith, just the chapter headings. So that really shows the depth and the fiqh of Imam al-Bukhari. So if we were to read what's in these worksheets, then under this answer, it says, Abu Ahmad ibn Adi, he says, I witnessed that a number of mashayikh said Imam al-Bukhari wrote the chapter headings of his book between the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and his mimbar, and after every chapter heading he wrote he would pray 2 rak'at. That's also a story of Imam Bukhari. Before he would write a chapter heading, and that those are hadith in there, he would pray 2 rak'at in the Rawdah, which is the garden from the gardens of paradise, which is between the mimbar of the Prophet ﷺ and his house. If you've been, or the house of Aisha, radiallahu anha. So if you've been in Medina, you've seen that area. He says Imam al-Bukhari has fiqh within his chapter headings because his chapter headings were based upon his fiqhi opinions due to how intellectual he was. His chapter headings are of two types: apparent chapter headings and hidden chapter headings. So some are easy to spot and some are a bit more difficult that you have to work out. Now, how many ahadith are there in Sahih Al-Bukhari? According to Ibn Salah, there are 7,275. 7,275 ahadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari. But if you take out the repeated ahadith, then it's about 4,000. So it's 7,275. If you take out the repeated ahadith, then there are 4,000. Then there are 4,000. Now, before we conclude, there's a couple of issues that I do want to talk about. The first is, one thing that Imam Bukhari was known for was doing taqti' of hadith. Taqti', cutting up hadith. Meaning, and this we're going to take as one difference between Bukhari and Muslim, is that he wouldn't mention the whole hadith. He would only mention the part which is needed. So if the hadith is, let's say, 5 sentences, each sentence is talking about something else. Only the first sentence is needed for that chapter, then he would only mention that first sentence. And the second, third, and fourth sentence, he won't do it. But if the second sentence is needed in a different chapter, he'll bring only the second sentence in that different chapter, and so on. So he would, and that would cause him to repeat a hadith a lot as well. Whenever it's needed, he would repeat it. Whenever it's needed, he would repeat it. So why would he do that? Firstly, due to the need. Right? And secondly, to achieve the objective. If talking about a particular topic, you don't need to add everything else. It's too much and it's extra information which isn't needed. But sometimes another benefit is that he would repeat a hadith because there's a benefit in there. Maybe the wording, there's a benefit in the wording. There's 2 different wordings of the same hadith. So he would repeat the hadith a lot. And he'll use 2 different chains of narration. That's why you have slightly different wording. Sometimes the narrators are different. So maybe one narration, it supports the other narration, or it explains who the people are in the other narration, and so on. So it brings more clarity as well. These are all amongst the reasons why Imam Bukhari would split up hadith and mention them in different places. Now, another thing which is important is Imam Bukhari, the reason everyone has agreed upon this authenticity is because he has more conditions than the 5 conditions of Sahih Hadith. It's not a normal Sahih Hadith. He's added more conditions upon the 5 which make it even more authentic. So there's no doubt in it whatsoever. So what are some of the extra conditions that he had? The first, he mentioned that all of the narrators must be unanimously agreed upon as authentic. So this narrator, everyone agrees that he's authentic. It's not like some ulama consider him authentic and some others, and what's correct is that he is authentic. No, everyone agrees that he's authentic. There's no doubt in it. Another condition is that there's no differences between the authentic narrations. So let's say one authentic narration has more than one narration. There can't be any differences. Okay? This is different to contradiction. Contradiction is clear, where somebody's saying the exact opposite. But differences can be slight differences, right? Where a part of the story is, mentioned slightly in a different way, or whatever the case may be. Then there can't be any, major differences between those narrations. The third is that all of them have to be fully connected. Meaning, if any of them had anyone missing, he wouldn't mention them. Because sometimes a missing, even though somebody can be missing, it can still be made stronger due to supporting narrations and so on. No, that hadith has to have a full chain of narration. There's no discussion about that. And the fourth, and this is something where him and Imam Muslim differed in, is that it has to be established that each narrator met the other narrator. For example, I narrate a hadith to Awwab. And Awwab narrated to Samir, and Samir narrated to Na'im, and so on. Now, Samir and Awwab, we have to know 100%, it has to be authenticated, it has to be established that these two met. Now, Imam Muslim didn't have that condition. Imam Muslim, his condition was that we just have to know it's possible for them to meet. Even though if it's not documented, doesn't matter. They're both from the same area, they're both from the students of the same teacher. So it's most likely they would have met. And because they're both trustworthy, and they said that I've heard from this person, right, we're going to accept it. So Imam Muslim would accept it, which makes complete sense. But Imam Bukhari was more stricter. He said, no, we have to know that they met. You have to know that they met. So these are some conditions that are in Bukhari, which are more than what is in a normal Sahih Hadith. Another issue of Bukhari, which is important, is known as Mu'allaqat al-Bukhari. Now this is a bit of a technical issue, and a bit more higher level, but I thought I'll mention it just for the benefit, because it can be a doubt that some students have. Mu'allaq is a hadith where the shaykh of the narrator, so for example for Bukhari, the shaykh, his teacher, him, either he is not mentioned, or him and anybody else above him is not mentioned, all the way back to whoever said that statement. So for example, it is five people between Bukhari and the Prophet ﷺ. Bukhari doesn't say his teacher said. He says, he starts off with the teacher of the teacher. Or he misses him out as well. Or even if he misses out the whole chain of narration and just says, the Prophet ﷺ said, or Ibn Abbas said, and so on. So it's when anybody from above the author is missed out. So it could be one person or it could be more. Does that make sense? What mu'allaq hadith is. Yeah? A mu'allaq hadith is where the shaykh of the author, or the one who's written the hadith, he's missing, or he and anybody above him is missing all the way until the person who has narrated that statement. So if it's a chain going back to a sahabi, statement of a sahabi, and so on. Right. Now what's the ruling on this narration? Is it sahih, hasan, da'if? It's da'if. Without doubt it's da'if. Right? Because you don't have people missing in the chain. Never mind if you miss out the whole chain and just mention who said it. For example, all the books, all the hadith we read now are all mu'allaq. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet said, that's mu'allaq. We don't mention the chain to Abu Hurairah. And Ibn Umar, on the authority of Ibn Umar, the chain going back to Ibn Umar, we've not mentioned it. That's mu'allaq. But obviously for us it's okay. Why? Because then we say, narrated al-Bukhari, narrated al-Muslim. So anybody who does want the full chain can go back to that. So in that sense it's okay for us. But Imam Bukhari, he has mu'allaqat in Sahih Al-Bukhari. He has mu'allaqat. Mu'allaqat is plural of the word mu'allaq. So how do we combine between the fact that Bukhari is the most authentic book out there, but he has mu'allaqat? Now, the main answer, a general answer that you can give, I'll give you a general answer, then I'll give you a more specific answer. The general answer we say is that those ahadith, or those narrations, whether it's a statement of Sahabi, or most of them are not part of the book. It'll be the chapter heading. Or it'll be, like a side point statement of Sahabi or something. So something which is not having an effect on it's not part of the actual book. It's not part of the actual book. So if instead of him saying a chapter heading, the chapter of X, Y, and Z, he just put a statement of a Sahabi instead. That's the chapter heading. Which is better, because you rather use a statement of a Sahabi than your own statement. But if you want to go into more detail and give you a detailed answer, then the detailed answer is as follows. There are 1,341, 1341, 1,341 mu'allaqat in Sahih Al-Bukhari. That's a lot, eh? All of them are connected. So all of them are fully connected in other places in Bukhari. So sometimes Imam Bukhari was shortened and not mentioned the whole chain. Why? Because he's mentioned it in other places in Bukhari. He's just not going to repeat himself. He's already mentioned the whole chain. So all of them, the whole chain of narration has been connected in other places in Bukhari, except for 161. Except for 161. So that number's gone down drastically. It's 161. So now we've got 161. Still a lot. These 161 are of two types. The first is where Imam al-Bukhari does jazm. Imam al-Bukhari, he does jazm. Jazm means where he clearly states that this person said this. He clearly mentions that this person said this. He said, Abu Hurairah said, Ibn Abbas said, and so on. If he clearly states that, then all of them are authentic. All of them are authentic because their chains have been found. The ulama looked into those chains and found all of them. For example, Ibn Hajar in his explanation, we're going to take in his explanation of Fath al-Bari, I think within Fath al-Bari, whenever these came up, and also he's got other books as well, Ta'aliq and Ma'aliq and so on of Bukhari, he finds all of them. So Ibn Hajar did a lot of research in all of these, in Fath al-Bari and also in other books, where he found all of them. Okay? So if Imam Bukhari does jazm, then they are all authentic. The second type is where he does not do jazm, where he doesn't clearly say this person said it, but he uses something called صيغة التمريض. صيغة صاد يا غين تا مربوطة تمريض تا ميم را يا ضاد تا ميم را يا ضاد. From the word مرض, مريض, illness, right? From that word. Meaning, the way he would write it is that he would say, it's been narrated that this person said it. He didn't clearly say this person said it, it's been narrated. These are of different types. Some of these are authentic, some of these are hasan, and some of these are da'if. But so even if they are da'if, it's not an issue because these ones are not part of his book. These are the ones where they come in the chapter headings and so on. Okay, so that's why if you actually read the books of the ulama, if they were to narrate one of these, they would say is narrated by Bukhari mu'allaqan, in a form of being mu'allaq. So they would mention that. And then they would also, if they're doing proper research, then they would also say وَأَوْصَلَهُ إِبْنُ حَجَرٍ فِي كَذَا وَكَذَا. But it's been, the full chain of narration has been found by Ibn Hajar in his book, this and that. Okay, if he found it. نعم. No, it's not part of the book. It's like a chapter heading, so doesn't need to be authentic. Because the chapter heading aslan, it doesn't need to be a narration. It can be his own statement that he says. So if his own statement, he would rather use statement of a sahabi or a tabi'i rather than himself. So it doesn't really matter. Now, so okay, so this is to do with Sahih Al-Bukhari. Now. Well, particular specific hadith, I'm not sure of, but that's the general answer. Inshallah, maybe later on I can look into that specific hadith for you, inshallah. Okay, now if we go to the explanations of Sahih Al-Bukhari, now there's a few explanations. We have A'lam al-Hadith by Al-Khattabi. We have one called Fath al-Bari by Ibn Rajab. Fath al-Bari by who? Ibn Rajab or Ibn Hajar? Huh? Ibn Rajab. Right, there are two Fath al-Baris, one by Ibn Rajab and one by Ibn Hajar. The first one was Ibn Rajab. He started an explanation, but he didn't complete it. He only reached Kitab al-Janaiz, the book of funerals. And even though he just reached the book of funerals, I think you can find it in a Taba' of Dar ibn Jawzi, I think 6 volumes. 6 volumes, and it's just that much. The second Fath al-Bari is the main one, by Ibn Hajar. That's the main one. So this is what I need you to remember. What's the main explanation of Sahih Bukhari? Fath al-Bari by Ibn Hajar. Now the ulama do say that if Ibn Rajab, if Allah allowed him to live longer and complete the explanation, it would have been better than Ibn Hajar's. But he didn't. And there's no doubt that Ibn Hajar, who came after, he benefited from Ibn Rajab. And even that's maybe why he gave it the same name. And there's 2 volumes. The first 2 volumes is called Hadyu As-Sari. That's like an introduction to Bukhari. So there's a lot of details about Bukhari. It even talks a bit about the Mu'allaqat Bukhari and so many other issues. Okay, so that is the main explanation of Sahih Bukhari. Now we can move on to Sahih Muslim. Now with Sahih Muslim, it says here, it is widely known as Sahih Muslim as an attribute to the Imam. However, Ibn Salah said, it has been narrated to us upon the authority of Imam Muslim that he said, I authored this Musnad as-Sahih from 300,000 hadith I heard. So Imam Muslim, what does he call it? Al-Musnad as-Sahih. So therefore, what's the full name of Sahih Muslim? The full name is written over here. Al-Musnad as-Sahih al-Mukhtasar min as-Sunan binaql al-adli an al-adli an Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And all of this is written in the worksheets. If you don't have the worksheets, you're going to struggle. Okay? Al-Musnad, what does that mean here? Full chain narration going back to the Prophet ﷺ. As-Sahih, authentic. Al-Mukhtasar, summarized. Min as-Sunan, from the Sunan, yani from the Sunnahs. Now the next 2 words, they're the new words. Binaql al-adl. Naql means the transmission. Of adl, trustworthy. Anil adl, upon the trustworthy. Ar Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So basically he's saying, that all these words you know. It's got complete chains of narration going back to the Prophet ﷺ. It's all authentic. It's summarized. And these are hadith that pertaining to the Sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ. And they have been transmitted to us with a complete chain of narration. All of them are trustworthy going back to the Prophet ﷺ. That's the meaning of the title of Sahih Muslim. Now why did he author this book? Remember I said there's one general answer, which is due to the widespread of weak ahadith. That's the general meaning. That's the general answer. But the second answer is that one of Imam Muslim's students had requested it. One of Imam Muslim's students had requested for him to write Sahih Muslim. And it took him 15 years to write it. It took him 15 years to write it. Now, does Sahih Muslim have chapter headings in his book? Does Sahih Muslim have chapter headings in his book? No. So if you open Sahih Muslim, it's not got chapter headings in there. Right, good. The answer is yes and no. In terms of wording, then no. Meaning Imam Muslim did not write chapter, let's say, chapter of wudu, then chapter of what breaks the wudu, and chapter of wiping of the socks, and chapter of this. He didn't put these chapter headings like a normal book has chapter headings. He just wrote hadith, 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 hadith. But in terms of meaning, it is. Meaning, in terms of meaning, all the ahadith pertaining to wudu are together, then all the ahadith pertaining to salah together, then all the ahadith pertaining to zakah together, all the ahadith pertaining to fasting are together. So in terms of meaning, they are. So it is structured. He just didn't take time out to write chapter and then the name of the chapter. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he came along later, and his explanation is the main explanation of Sahih Muslim. When he was explaining, he added in chapter headings. He added in the chapter headings. So now if you were to open Sahih Muslim, and if you find chapter headings, those chapter headings are not written by Imam Muslim. They've been taken from Imam An-Nawawi. There are other scholars that put their chapter headings, but everyone uses Imam Nawawi's. And that's why in the English, I don't think they have it, which is not a good thing. But in Arabic, the chapter headings would be in square brackets. In Arabic books, if you see square brackets, that means that it has been added in by the editor. So the editor of the book, he took the chapter headings from Imam Nawawi and added it in, to make it easier for a person to navigate where the ahadith are. Right, what are some of the specialities of his book? And some things which are specific to Imam Muslim. The first is that Imam Muslim would mention many different chains of narration for the same hadith. Okay? for the same hadith. Basically what that means is that Imam Muslim, if he came to a hadith, he'll put the hadith, and if he has other chains of narration for that same hadith, he'll add those chains of narration in there as well. He'll add those chains of narration in there as well. And that's different to Bukhari. Bukhari would do what? Just mention the part that's needed and move on. And then repeat it in a different place if it's needed. Imam Muslim wouldn't do that. Imam Muslim would mention it all in one place. And most of the time it's 3 or 4 narrations of the same hadith. Number 2, he would mention the full hadith every time, even for specific topics. So Imam Bukhari would just mention that specific sentence which is needed. But Imam Muslim would mention the whole hadith, even if the rest of the hadith is not to do with that chapter heading. Another thing that Imam Muslim would do is that he would differentiate between the words حدثنا wa akhbarana. حدثنا and akhbarana both translate to is being narrated to us. Now there are some muhaddithun that don't differentiate between them, and then there are others that do, and they differ exactly what the difference is. But Imam Muslim, he would, if he saw حدثنا akhbarana, he would separate the 2 narrations. These are 2 different things, because according to him they mean 2 separate things. So he would say that حدثنا means that a teacher narrates the hadith to the student. حدثنا means the teacher narrates the hadith to the student. أخبرنا means the student reads the hadith to the teacher. So the student's got a book and he reads the hadith and the teacher agrees to it. So he was Imam Muslim, one good thing about Imam Muslim, he's very precise in these types of things. So he would see these are 2 different things we need to differentiate. Because the way this person has attained the hadith is 2 different ways. And you'll find in these hadithi benefits, there's differences. Imam Muslim would mention a lot more. That's why they say that Bukhari is better for a faqih and Muslim is better for a muhaddith, or somebody who wants to specialize in hadith. But Bukhari is more for fiqh. Even though it's the most authentic. The shortest chain of narration in Sahih Muslim is 4. Whereas Bukhari, what's the shortest? 3. He would use something called ha at-tahwil. Ha at-tahwil is literally, if you read the chain of narration, it'll say حدثنا فلان قال حدثنا فلان, and out of nowhere just the random letter ha. Just a letter ha and then move on. What does that do? The ha at-tahwil is basically a way to make the chain of narration shorter. It's a way of making the chain of narration shorter. So for example, I narrate a hadith to Awwab, who narrates it to Sami', who narrates it to Na'im, who narrates it to Musa, who narrates it to Shahnawaz. Okay? Then there's and Shahnawaz, he's got his own book of hadith, Sahih Shahnawaz, and he's written the book in there. Yeah? Then there's another chain of narration. Awwab narrates from me, who narrates to Sami', who narrates to Faisal, who narrates to the other Awwab, who narrates to A'mash, who narrates to Al-Alama Al-Hafiz Bilal, Al-Imam Bilal. And Bilal has got his book called Sunan Bilal. Okay, right. We have these 2 books of hadith now. We have a chain of narration in the book of Al-Hafiz Shahnawaz. And we have a chain of narration in the book of Imam Bilal. These are 2 separate chains of narration. Now what would Imam Muslim do? Would he say the whole chain of narration and then repeat the whole chain of narration again? No. What Imam Muslim would do, if he has these 2 chains of narration, he would say, is حدثنا شانواز قال حدثنا موسى قال حدثنا نعيم قال حدثنا سميع. So he comes back to Sami', because the first 2 people were the same in both chain narrations, Awwab and Sami', and then it differed after that. Yeah. So he would go to Sami'. After Sami''s name, he would say ha. After Sami''s name, he would say ha. And then he would go to the other chain narration. Bilal to A'mash to the other Awwab to Faisal to Na'im to Sami'. Once they've reached the same person, the common denominator, then he just carries on as normal. It's basically a way of shortening the chain of narration. That's something that Imam Muslim would do a lot in Sahih Muslim. Another thing that Imam Muslim would do is that if the narrator is ambiguous, that we don't know who he is, حدثنا Sufyan, it was narrated to us by Sufyan. Who is that Sufyan? Is it Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan al-Thawri? We don't know. In that chain of narration, it was not mentioned to us. In that chain of narration, it was not mentioned to us, but Imam Muslim would add it in. So he would explain. Sufyan and it is Ibn Uyayna. It's referring to, and then he would carry on. So he would add these small things in to clarify who the narrators were. These are some things that Imam Muslim would do. Now, as you can see, the next question is, which is better, Bukhari or Muslim? And what are some of the differences between Bukhari and Muslim? Adhan Kabir? Okay, right. We will continue after Salah, inshallah. Hopefully 20 minutes maximum half an hour, inshallah, after Salah. We will continue, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and try to take a minimum kutub al-sittah. And if you can take more than that, that'll be good, inshallah. So everyone please remain behind after Salah, and we'll continue after Salah. Subhanakallah wa hamdika, la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Yeah. Okay, continuing with this. So we just talked about Sahih Muslim. So therefore, what are the differences between Bukhari and Muslim? Now the general summary is what the poet says in the following lines of poetry that I've got for you here, where he says, تشاجر قوم في البخاري ومسلم لدي وقالوا أي ذين تقدموا فقلت لقد فاق البخاري صحة كما فاق في حسن الصناعة مسلم. بخاري نعم. So he says that the people have differed in Bukhari and Muslim لدي, and they've come to me and they've asked أي ذين تقدموا, which of the two is given precedence to, which of the two is better. He said فقلت, so my answer is لقد فاق البخاري صحة, Bukhari is better in terms of authenticity, كما فاق في حسن الصناعة مسلم, and when it comes to good narrations then it is Muslim. In other words, Bukhari is more authentic, and also we can add better for a faqih, but Muslim is better for a muhaddith. Muslim is better for a muhaddith because of the hadithi benefits which are in there. So, what are some of the differences between Bukhari and Muslim? Now, you guys tell me from what you've heard, from the explanation we've given so far, huh? So Bukhari's conditions are much more stricter than Imam Muslim, because his condition is that we have to know that they have met, whereas Imam Muslim says it's enough to know that there's a possibility of them meeting. What else? So Muslim would differentiate between حدثنا أخبرنا, and Bukhari wouldn't. What else? Imam Bukhari would quote a hadith, whereas Imam Muslim would mention the whole hadith. Imam Muslim would mention multiple chains of narration for the same hadith. Imam Bukhari would just mention it once and move on, and only repeat it in a different place if it is needed. You had your hand up? Yeah, so he would always write the full narration, but Imam Bukhari would only mention the part which is needed. Imam Muslim would clarify the name. So if the narrator said it was narrated to me by Sufyan or by Muhammad and didn't explain who it was, Imam Muslim would add that on. The shortest chain of narration in Muslim is 4, and the shortest chain of narration in Bukhari is 3. Yeah, so Imam Muslim has not written chapter headings, and Bukhari has. And not only that, he has fiqh in his chapter headings. Anything else? Yeah, so Muslim would use ha at-tahwil. Tahwil means to change. The ha of like changing chain of narration. Bukhari wouldn't. Bukhari has the mu'allaqat now. They are not mentioned to you the number of hadith for Muslim. So Bukhari was 7,000 and how much? Huh? 7,275. As for Bukhari, as for Muslim, he has 5,770. $5,770. So Bukhari has slightly more. And then if you take out the repeated ones, it comes to 3,033. Okay. I've mentioned that. No. It's on the next page. So without recurring hadith, 3,033 hadith, and including the recurring, it is 5,770. Then I've written, however, there is great dispute regarding numbers as there are different ways of counting the hadith in his book. In Muslim, there's an issue that we have, which is there's different ways of counting. Okay, so another difference which you can add between Bukhari and Muslim is that Imam Muslim has an introduction and Bukhari doesn't. So Imam Muslim has a proper full introduction, and he's one of the first muhaddithin to have an introduction. Whereas Bukhari just starts, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Babu Kayfa Bada al-Wahi, the chapter of how revelation started, and then he says, Haddathana al-Humaydi, Innama al-A'mal bin-Niyat. It goes straight in with the ahadith. So Imam Muslim has an introduction, and within that introduction he mentions and talks about a number of different issues about the importance of narrating only that which is authentic and so on. Now, in that introduction, he has some ahadith as well. He has some ahadith in the introduction as well. Now, there's two issues with these ahadith. Firstly, some of these ahadith are not authentic. Some of these ahadith in the introduction of Sahih Muslim are not authentic. But how is Sahih Muslim authentic? We say that's not part of the book. His book starts from the first hadith that he mentions, which is Hadith Jibreel. From there onwards, everything is authentic. That's why if somebody narrates a hadith from the introduction of Imam Muslim, they have to say, this is narrated by Imam Muslim in his introduction. You have to clarify that, because not all of them are authentic. The second issue that we have is that when you come to Hadith Jibreel, some ulama have said that Hadith Jibreel, they'll say narrated by Sahih Imam Muslim in his Sahih, Hadith number 8. Even though Hadith Jibreel is the first Hadith in Sahih Muslim. Why is it number 8? Because some scholars started to count the Hadith from the introduction. So if you include the introduction, then it becomes number 8. Otherwise, it's Hadith number 1. So that's why you might find a slight differing in numbering. Another reason why you might find differences in numbers is because we said that Imam Muslim, for the same hadith, will mention a number of narrations. So let's say he'll mention 4 narrations of the same hadith. Some ulama would count all 4 narrations as 4 separate hadith. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And some ulama would say, no, it's all the same hadith, give it one number. I think if you go to sunnah.com, the way they do it, they've got the number and then put A, B, C, D to refer to the which narration it is. So the point being here is that with Imam Muslim, we have to be a bit more careful in the numbering. So don't always, if you see a certain numbering in a book and you go and check, don't turn around and say, oh, the guy lied, he's not referenced it properly. No, there's different ways of referencing these hadith numbers. Okay, now bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, the last issue before we move on is which are the main works upon Sahih Muslim. The main explanation that you need to know is Al-Minhaj, Sharh Sahih Muslim Ibn Al-Hajjaj. Even if you don't remember the whole name, at least remember the name Al-Minhaj. That is by Imam An-Nawawi. Al-Minhaj fi Sharh Al-Minhaj Sharh Sahih Muslim Ibn Al-Hajjaj. Al-Minhaj Sharh Sahih Muslim Ibn Al-Hajjaj, because Imam Muslim's name is Muslim Ibn Al-Hajjaj. And that is by Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah. That is the main explanation for Sahih Muslim. Okay, and I've written for you the other explanations. The fifth one, Al-Bahr al-Mahit, by Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Adam al-Ethiopi, who just passed away a few years ago in Mecca. He's a teacher of Sheikh Muhammad al-Maliki. Sheikh Muhammad al-Maliki, I think, studied with him, I don't know, 17 years or something like that. He's got an explanation. And have I written how many chapters it is here? How many volumes? I've not mentioned how many volumes it is. I can't remember the exact number. It's about 30 volumes. And he's got one for, I think, Tirmidhi, which is also about 40, 50 volumes. Or something. They're really big. And expensive as well. But the main explanation that you need to know of is Al-Minhaj, Sharh Sahih Muslim ibn Hajjaj by Imam An-Nawawi. On the next page you have, what's the meaning of Muttafaqun alayh? Muttafaqun alayh, as we know, means agreed upon, i.e. agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim from the same narrator. The Sahabi has to be the same. If the hadith is the same, but the Sahabi is different, that's not considered Muttafaqun alayh. How would you narrate that? You would say, it's narrated by Bukhari on the authority of Abu Hurairah, and narrated by Muslim on the authority of Ibn Umar, for example. You would not say Muttafaqun alayh. The condition is that it has to be the same companion. Now, that's the main usage, and it's mentioned by Ibn Hajar, and everyone follows him after that. There were a couple of scholars who had different usages. Imam al-Bayhaqi, according to him, it was narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, even if the Sahabi is different, so he didn't have that condition. Abu al-Barakat Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah, the grandfather of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, when he said Muttafaqun alayh in his book, Muntaq al-Akhbar, he would mean narrated by Bukhari, Muslim, and Imam Ahmad. Because he was Hanbali, so his Imam. It's been agreed upon, all three. But generally, apart from these two and three, maybe a few examples here and there, Muttafaqun alayh means agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim from the same companion. On the next page, we have some statements of the ulama regarding Bukhari and Muslim, just to show their status. Imam An-Nawawi, he says, in his explanation of Sahih Muslim, the scholars have unanimously agreed that the most authentic books after the Noble Quran are the Sahihain. Sahihain means two Sahihs, Bukhari and Muslim. Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and the Ummah has received them with acceptance. Imam Nawawi also said, the Ummah has unanimously agreed that these two books, the Bukhari and Muslim, are authentic, and it is obligatory to follow the ahadith. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said, there is no book beneath the canopy of the sky which is more authentic than Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim after the Quran. Imam al-Haramain al-Juwayni, he's Ash'ari. Okay, he's not somebody that a person should take from, but mentioning his statement to show that even Ahlul Bid'ah accept Bukhari and Muslim. He said, if a man was to swear that he would divorce his wife, if it were not the case that what is in the books of Bukhari and Muslim is what they rule to be sound of words of the Prophet ﷺ, then divorce would not be binding upon him, as he would not have been breaking his oath, because Muslim scholars have unanimously agreed that they are authentic. Very funny example, he's saying, if somebody makes an oath that if what is in Bukhari and Muslim, if it's not authentic, I'll divorce my wife. So he says, if somebody made that oath, right, it doesn't count as a divorce. Why? Because everything is authentic. Everything is authentic. And that we're going to study that in fiqh, different ways of giving divorce. Some people say that if you leave the house, you're divorced. Like they put a condition. Now what's the ruling? The ruling is that if you leave, that counts as divorce, and if she doesn't, it doesn't count as a divorce. So this is another example. If Bukhari and Muslim is not authentic, then I'm giving you a divorce. If somebody says that, I don't know who would say that. If you're angry, the first thing, only muhaddith, the first thing comes to the head will be Bukhari and Muslim. Right? But if he did say that, then the divorce will not take place because everything in there is authentic. Al-Farabri, who is the main narrator of the Sahih Al-Bukhari, he said, the Bukhari said, I have not written down in my Sahih a hadith except that I sought guidance from Allah, and I was certain with its authenticity. I was certain with its authenticity. Now, Farabri, he was one of the main students of Bukhari and one of the main people who narrated his Sahih. Even though there are many people who heard Sahih Bukhari, but he's the main one that narrated it. Ibn Khuzaymah said, I have not seen underneath or under the canopy of the heavens anyone who is more knowledgeable and more observant in the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than Imam al-Bukhari. So as you can see, these are just a few statements, but showing the great status of of Bukhari and Muslim. Let's move on to the other books now. Now we have something known as Sunan. What is a Sunan? A Sunan is a hadith book which gathers a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says here, those books which gather a hadith al-ahkam al-marfu'ah. Ahkam means rulings, i.e. the ahadith going back to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and these ahadith are ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. So in simple terms, what is Sunan? It's a book which gathers the ahadith which are marfu' and ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. Marfu' meaning it has the statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It doesn't really have the statements of Sahaba and Tabi'in. So it doesn't have mawqufat and maqtu'at. And they are ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. Ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. So you want to know how to pray, how to do wudu, give zakah, fast, buying and selling, divorce, marriage, criminal law, all of that stuff. The best books for that, or from the best books, are Sunan. Or those books which specify those ahadith pertaining to that only are the Sunan. So Sunan Abu Dawood, especially Sunan Abu Dawood. Especially Ahl Hadith, they give a lot of importance to Sunan Abu Dawood over the others. And they consider that to be from the best books of hadith when it comes to fiqh. And another terminology which is used for books of hadith which are pertaining to fiqh, they're known as books of ahkam. Or ahadith al-ahkam. Hadith of ahkam is rulings, i.e. fiqh rulings. So when you talk about the issue of hadith al-ahkam, the first one that should come up is Abu Dawood. And then after that come all the later ones that we'll study, Bulugh al-Maram, Umdat al-Ahkam, and all the other books. So what are the main Sunan? The four Sunan. Sunan Abu Dawood, Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan An-Nasa'i, and Sunan Ibn Majah. It's only Sunan Tirmidhi, we're going to talk about the name properly, but generally these are the four Sunan. They're known as Sunan Al-Arba'un, the four Sunan. Then the others as well, Sunan Ad-Darimi, Al-Bayhaqi, and the Daraqutni. Now the name of the book Sunan Abu Dawood and why he wrote it. As for why he wrote it, then he didn't really mention a reason. Okay, so Abu Dawood didn't mention a reason. So we had reasons for Bukhari and Muslim, but we didn't really have a reason for. He didn't mention a reason for his Sunan Abu Dawood. So therefore the ulama say, just a general answer, that he hoped to benefit the Muslims by preserving hadith and getting the rewards of narrating hadith. That's a general answer. And that'll also be the same answer for many of the following books I will take as well. Now, what's the name of the book? Now, the name is actually called Sunan. So it's not got a long name to it. And this is actually mentioned. Now, one special thing about Abu Dawood is that he has a separate book or a letter that he wrote, which is called Risalatu Abi Dawood ila Ahli Makkah. The letter of Abu Dawood to the people of Makkah. He wrote a letter to the people of Makkah. People in Makkah asked him questions about his Sunan, his book. So he answered a lot of those questions and he explained his methodology in that letter. So a lot of the things that we learn about Abu Dawood, what was his conditions, his methodology and so on, we learn from where? That letter that he wrote to the people of Makkah. And in that letter, he actually said, فَإِنَّكُمْ سَأَلْتُمْ أَنْ أَذْكُرَ لَكُمْ الْأَحَادِيثَ الَّتِي فِي كِتَابِ السُّنَنِ. That verily you have asked for me to mention to you the ahadith which have been mentioned in the book As-Sunan. So he mentioned the title As-Sunan. Now a few things just about the methodology of the book. So as I said, this book is one of the foundational books when it comes to ahadith of ahkam. Ahkam meaning rulings, fiqh. So fiqh is studied in two ways. Fiqh is studied in two ways. You have fiqh of hadith, where you come to the hadith and you take the benefit from the hadith. Like this hadith means this and this shows the permissibility of this and so on. And the other way is studying fiqh through fiqh books. Fiqh books is the opposite, where it doesn't mention to you, especially the summarized books don't mention to you the dalil. They just mention to you the rulings are, this is halal and then you do this and then it's haram. It just gives you the rulings. The bigger books, they will have the dalil, but the summarized smaller books generally don't have the dalil, and it's upon the teacher to mention the dalil. Both have the pros and cons. Like the fiqh book, it makes it easy what to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, all in one place. Okay? But then the issue with the fiqh of hadith books, yes, the benefit of fiqh of hadith is that you're directly studying from the hadith. Whereas fiqh books, they don't really give as much importance to authenticity of hadith and mentioning dalils as much and so on. But then the issue with fiqh of hadith is that the teacher who's explaining, you're actually following his madhab and his interpretation of the hadith. Because there's many issues that more than one imam and more than one madhab would use the same hadith as their dalil, but the understanding is different. So if you're studying from a teacher, that teacher is giving you his understanding of the hadith. The other issue as well is that hadith is not the only dalil in Islam. It's the main one, but you have Quran, you have ijma', you have qiyas, you have statements of Sahaba, you have so many other things as well, which obviously wouldn't be mentioned in the hadith book. Also, the thing with hadith sometimes, and this could be a pro, it could be a con as well, it could be a benefit, it could be a harm, where the hadith itself will talk about so many other things and it'll have so many other benefits. So it's good from the aspect is that you learn not only fiqh rulings, but you learn much more as well. But then the con is that if you're trying to learn how to pray salah, it can be too much information as well. Okay, so both have their pros and cons. The best is that a Muslim or a student of knowledge combines between the two. He combines between the two. That's the best bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, he has a very, very long statement. Shaykh Sahimi in our private gathering that we had, he literally just read out the whole statement. It was a good 20 minutes. He was just reading from his phone. Yeah, I didn't write a word down. But he sent it to me later, which is fine. He asked me to translate it. Inshallah, if I do end up translating it, I'll send that to you. So he mentions studying from books of hadith and studying from books of fiqh, the pros and cons of each. And he goes into detail with all of that. But bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, the summary is that a student of knowledge needs to have both. So this book is a foundation when it comes to ahadith al-ahkam. And many of the ulama have praised it. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says that Sunan Abu Dawood it's become something which gives rulings between the people of Islam. Meaning, if you don't know the ruling of something, what book do you go back to? Sunan Abu Dawood. That's like a hakam. It's a ruler between what's right and wrong. That's the position it's given. But he mentions a number of other things as well. From the things that he mentioned, is that he mentioned what is the most authentic in that chapter. So in that chapter, let's say, ruling of does X, Y, and Z break your wudu or not? He'll bring the ahadith which is the most authentic. What does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is authentic, even though a lot of what is in there is either authentic or hasan, and what is da'if is very little. But he clarifies later that if there's no authentic hadith and the most authentic thing that he can have, that he can find, is a weak hadith, he'll mention it. Why? Because that's the most authentic in that chapter. He's not saying it is authentic, he's saying that's the most authentic of what is available. You see a slight difference between the two, yeah? He's mentioned that he doesn't narrate from anyone who is matruk, yani somebody who is a complete liar and you don't accept his hadith. In each chapter, he doesn't have many hadith. He only has generally one hadith or two hadith in each chapter. He doesn't mention too many. He would repeat hadith in one or two different ways if there's a benefit to it. If there's an extra word, even in one word, he would explain it. He would summarize hadith so you can understand the objective. So similar to Bukhari in that sense. He would use a mursal hadith as a dalil if he can't find a musnad hadith. He would use a mursal hadith as a dalil if he can't find a musnad hadith. Mursal means what a tabi'i says, the Prophet ﷺ said. So who's missing? Sahabi. And possibly other tabi'in as well. It's not just, and we're going to study Al-Baiquni. Imam Baiquni, his definition of mursal, he says, وَمُرْسَلٌ مِنْهُ الصَّحَابِي وَسَقَطْ. Mursal is where the sahabis dropped. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes other tabi'in can be dropped as well. In fact, there's a hadith, I believe in An-Nasa'i, regarding Surah Al-Ikhlas. There's 11 people in that chain of narration. 6 tabi'in are narrating from one another. So tabi'i, then a sahabi. So anyways, if you can't find a musnad hadith, a hadith, the full chain of narration going back to the Prophet ﷺ, he would use a mursal hadith as a dalil. Now, anyone that has wahan shadid, delusions, meaning makes mistakes, like so many mistakes, he wouldn't narrate the hadith. Munkar hadith, he wouldn't narrate. If he remains silent, then he said it is something that Imam Abu Dawood said that it's something that he deems to be that you can use as a dalil. So if he doesn't give a ruling on a hadith, then it means you can use that as a dalil. And this is different types. It could be sahih, it could be hasan, could be da'if, and it could be very weak as well. But that's only a few. But the point is that he will mention that because there's no other dalil available. Anyways, these are some of the main points within there. How many ahadith are there? 5,274. 5,274. Let's read some of what is written here. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi said, he showed the book to Imam Ahmad and Imam Ahmad found it to be good. And Imam Ahmad, so it was a teacher of Abu Dawood. Abu Dawood showed his sunan to Imam Ahmad and Imam Ahmad liked it. It's a good book. Yeah. Al-Khattabi says, the book by Abu Dawood is a noble book and there has not been written a book in the sciences of the religion like it. It has been given acceptance by all the people and it became a distinguishing book between the different sects of the scholars according to different schools of thought. This is what the people of Iraq, Egypt, Morocco based their fiqh upon, and many others of the different cities. There are many different explanations of Abu Dawood. The main one that we need to memorize is Awn al-Ma'bud. Awn al-Ma'bud by Shams al-Haq al-Azim Abadi. Only passed away last century. So what's the book called? Awn al-Ma'bud, Sharh Sunan Abu Dawood by Shams al-Haq Azim Abadi. It's written there. Let's move on to the next book, which is Sunan At-Tirmidhi. Sunan At-Tirmidhi. Now, Sunan At-Tirmidhi has different names. Now, what's better is actually to call Sunan At-Tirmidhi, to call it Jami At-Tirmidhi. Anyone heard that before? It's called Jami At-Tirmidhi. That's more precise. Why? Because it's not specific to just hadith of fiqh, hadith of ahkam, but it has the other topics as well. How many topics are there in Jami'? 8 topics, the ones that we took in Bukhari. So Jami' At-Tirmidhi has those 8 topics as well. And in fact, those 8 topics of what a Jami' is, I took it from the explanation of Tirmidhi by Al-Mubarak Furi. That's where I took those 8 topics from. So the full name of Jami' At-Tirmidhi is Al-Jami' Al-Mukhtasar min As-Sunan An Rasulullah sallallahu wa ma'rifati As-Sahih wal-Ma'luli wa ma alayhi al-amal. Al-Jami' i.e. comprehensive of those 8 chapters. Al-Mukhtasar summarized. Min as-Sunan, from the Sunan, An Rasulillah, on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wa ma'rifat as-sahih, and knowing what is authentic, wal ma'lul, and what has hidden defects, wa ma alayhi al-amal, and what the action is upon. These 3 things are from the specialities of Sunan At-Tirmidhi. 3 things that Imam At-Tirmidhi actually does. Ma'rifat as-sahih, wal ma'lul, i.e. he comments on the hadith and he mentions if there's hidden defects in the hadith. Ma'lul is a name for a hadith that has an illah, a hidden defect. Wa ma alayhi al-amal, and he also mentions what the action is upon, i.e. if this hadith is acted upon or not. The scholars take this hadith, because sometimes there can be the hadith but it's abrogated, or it contradicts the hadith, so you don't act upon it. So he mentions if it's acted upon or not. So what he does is, it's on the chapters of fiqh. He mentions the full chain of narrations. He summarizes them. In a chapter, there's only 1 or 2 hadith normally. After mentioning the hadith, he gives an indication to other narrations. So he doesn't mention the other narrations. So he'll mention a hadith and he'll say, wa fil bab, and in this chapter, there's a hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah ibn Umar, and just mention the names. Just give an indication that there's other hadith, but he wouldn't mention them fully. And he would give rulings of the hadith. In many times, Tirmidhi said Hasan, Hasan Sahih, Hasan Da'if, and so on. Right? He mentioned if there's hidden defects in the hadith. And then he'll also mention the mazahib of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and others, that did they act upon this hadith, what was their opinion regarding this issue as well. Hence the name, وَمَا عَلَيْهِ الْعَمَلِ, what the action is upon. And the reason he wrote this book, I've put his statement there, but he basically said that people have asked me to write this book, and for a long time I didn't, but I saw that other imams before me have written books and people have benefited from it, so I also wanted the reward of people benefiting, so that's why I wrote this book. And the whole statement is there for you to read. About the book, I've just explained that. Some of the main explanations, what you need to know is Tuhfatu al-Ahwadhi. Tuhfatu Al-Ahwazi, which is by Al-Mubarak Furi. By Al-Mubarak Furi. That's the main explanation of Jami At-Tirmidhi. We have Sunan An-Nasa'i. Now Sunan An-Nasa'i has two names. It's known as Al-Mujtaba, that's like a name, that's the name of it, Al-Mujtaba. And it's also known as Sunan As-Sughra. As-Sunan As-Sughra. Now As-Sunan As-Sughra means the small Sunan. The small Sunan. What does that mean? He has another book called the Big Sunan. As-Sunan Al-Kubra. And the story is that he wrote the Sunan Al-Kubra, the big one. And as he was traveling towards Egypt, he passed by Palestine, and in there was a village called Ramlah. So he passed by Ramlah in Palestine. And they asked him, is everything in a Sunan Al-Kubra authentic? Is everything authentic? And he said no. So they requested, can you just summarize for us what is authentic from there? So then he wrote As-Sunan As-Sughra or Al-Mujtaba. Now not everything in there is necessarily authentic, but it's a very high level of authenticity. It's a very high level of authenticity. And that's why many ulama actually prefer An-Nasa'i over Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi, because it's more stronger in authenticity. Now, Imam An-Nasa'i was very strong in hadith. He even has the famous book Al-Ilal. That's Imam At-Tirmidhi, sorry. Imam At-Tirmidhi was Ilal At-Tirmidhi. Or is it Ilal An-Nasa'i? That's Tirmidhi, no, it's Tirmidhi, it's not Nasa'i. Okay, about the book, again, it's on the chapters of fiqh. He explains the hard words. So if a word comes in the hadith, he'll explain it. So for example, one hadith, a Bedouin said, لا تزرموه. What does rumu mean? He said, يعني لا تقطعوا عليه. i.e., don't cut it upon him. Explain the meaning of the word. So he would explain meanings of the words of the hadith. He would also explain who the narrators are. So if it's not clear who the narrator is, he'll mention who that narrator is. And he would always try to narrate that which is the most authentic. He would repeat a hadith in different places if there was a need. He would mention the hidden defects. He would also criticize the narrators. So if there's a narrator who's weak, he'll comment that this narrator is weak and so on. And majority of the time, if the narrator is weak, he wouldn't remain silent, he would comment. Now sometimes, if he takes a certain opinion, and there's other ahadith which indicate towards the other opinion and they're authentic, he would mention the opposite ahadith as well. And the ulama say it's as though he's trying to say that it's permissible to do both. That's why he does it. That's why he would mention it. Because his opinion is that both are fine. Because there's dalil on both sides. Now the number of hadith that he has, the ulama differ the exact number, but approximately it's 5,758. 5,758. And the main explanations are three explanations. The Hashiyah by Imam Sindi is good. It's like just footnotes upon the main explanations of An-Nasa'i. The last book we have Sunan Ibn Majah. Sunan Ibn Majah. Now he doesn't mention a reason of why he authored it. So again we give the general answer that he wanted to gain the rewards of preserving hadith and so on. Now he's ordered the books upon the chapters of fiqh. He started off with those ahadith pertaining to Iman and Ilm. Iman and Aqidah and so on, and also knowledge as well. And he mentioned 24 chapters and 266 hadith. These hadith are very powerful. You know, a student of knowledge should study these hadith. And then after that, so after Iman and knowledge, then he moves on to fiqh. So he's got just in the beginning. And to us, even Imam Muslim, he does that as well. But obviously with this, he's called it as Sunan. So Sunan, to your mind, it would come only fiqh. But in the beginning, he does mention, as like an introduction, a few others regarding Aqidah and knowledge, and then he moves on to fiqh. He mentions only marfu'. Very rarely would he mention mawquf and maqtu'. And he wouldn't repeat hadith. He would not repeat hadith. And he would start with the most strongest and end with the weakest. He does have a lot of weak hadith in there, more than the other books, which I think we're going to talk, is written and we're going to talk about it. But most of those weak hadith are pertaining to targheeb and tarheeb, any rewards, punishments, and fada'il, virtues. So most are to do with targheeb and tarheeb, rewards and punishments and virtues. And he only has a few commentaries here and there when he would talk about, when he would criticize and mention hidden defects. Now, in his hadith, in his book, he has all three types of hadith: Sahih, Hasan, and Da'if. And he has a lot of Da'if hadith. And he does have a few fabricated hadith as well. But they are very little. Now there are some scholars that go into extremes and they criticize it a lot. And that's not the case. It's still a very respected book, a lot of benefits in there. And it's considered the sixth book when it comes to the Kutub al-Sittah. How many hadith are there? 1,500. 4,341. 4,341. So there are 37 kitabs, 37 books, and 1,500 chapters. 37 books, 1,500 chapters, and how many hadith? 4,341. And generally, most of those ahadith can be found in the other 5 books of hadith. How many ahadith does he have which is only in Sunan Ibn Majah? 1,329. 1,329 are only in Sunan Ibn Majah. And from those 1,329, the ulama, they say 428 are sahih, 428 are sahih, 199 are hasan, and 613 are da'if. And 613 are da'if. And then the remaining are the ones which are really weak or fabricated and so on. And there's no hadith when it comes to rulings which are fabricated. Those really weak and fabricated ones are when it comes to virtues and targheeb and tarheeb and so on. And there's a number of different explanations. And with that, alhamdulillah, we've taken the 6 books of hadith. Inshallah, next lesson, we'll take the remaining books of hadith, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. I think next lesson what we'll do is, what time is Maghrib? Next lesson. It's not on the timetable. Maghrib will probably be before 8 o'clock. So we'll start the lesson at 7:15 and we'll take the lesson all the way until 9:15 with a break for Maghrib in the middle. Inshallah. And we'll try to, so 2 hours but with a break. A good 20-minute break, maybe half an hour. Right? But with a break. And the reason for that is because I want to try to take as much as possible. Alhamdulillah, we didn't do as much as I wanted to, but we did the minimum, which is the 6 books of hadith. Obviously, took a bit of time in Bukhari and Muslim. Hopefully, next lesson we can. Can we finish the whole thing? I'm just having a look now. Okay, in terms of the books, bi'idhnillah, It'll take 1 or 2 more lessons. Maybe next lesson, if not the lesson after that, inshallah. And then after that, we're going to take a small introduction about Imam An-Nawawi. Who is Imam Nawawi? And we'll talk a bit about the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. And with that, we'll finish the whole introduction. And after that, you'll have an exam, inshallah. So make sure you start revising from now. Bismillah ta'ala. Any questions? No? Okay then, inshallah. I'll see you guys on Tuesday, bismillah. Subhanakallahumma hamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.